Chapter 1. Humanity's attempts to understand the universe have produced countless theories to explain how the world and the universe operate. Beautiful, elegant theories about things you can't see, like quantum mechanics, and things like gravity that make anvils fall on cartoon characters' heads. Along the way, they'd also found places where the math and theory are sound, but reality refuses to cooperate. For instance, in an infinite universe, other life forms beyond Earth are inevitable. Everybody knew this, but put it on their list of things not to talk about, until a physicist named Enrico Fermi leaned over to someone at a dinner party and asked, "If that's true, then where is everybody?" This is called a paradox, which in this case means, yeah, we don't know what's happening either. Weird, huh? The scientific community named this one after Fermi, whether it's an honor or punishment depends on who you talk to. Just as important, perhaps, for our story is a somewhat lesser-known Deeds paradox, which states that you cannot find anything until you either stop looking for it or don't need it anymore. Fermi came up with his idea at a fancy dinner party. Deeds didn't get invited to dinner parties. He came up with his in his living room one day after spending several fruitless hours searching for a pen, only to find one in a desk drawer where he'd already looked more than a dozen times. As a result, Deeds posited that your odds of finding anything were inversely proportional to your need for it. While it's not as disturbing as the grandfather paradox and doesn't sell as many t-shirts as Fermi's paradox, it's still on the list of things that are pretty useful to know if your job is to watch the skies for approaching alien invasions. People who routinely ask secret government appropriations committees for $2 billion to build a giant telescope like to downplay Deeds and his harebrained theories. It's hard to persuade a senator you need $2 billion to not find something. Honestly, a refrigerator magnet in the break room would have been enough, but no one bothered. No human eyes spotted the flying saucer that warm spring night. The only pair of eyes that did spot the saucer-shaped spacecraft were not human. They belonged to a robot, standing atop a trash heap on the outskirts of a small American city called Sedville. The robot hadn't been looking for aliens that night. It was trying to find a hat that had been knocked off its head and carried over a fence into the junkyard by the wind. The metal man wasn't all that surprised to see them, though. It had been that kind of day. Technically, the robot didn't have eyes. In their place, it sported a handful of photoreceptors embedded in wads of modeling clay and shoved into holes that were punched in the upended wastebasket that served as its head. The robot was an odd-looking creation, not the finest example of engineering or design, festooned with exciting wing bits and blinking lights. The lights didn't do anything except blink. Its maker just liked blinking lights, and when they weren't mostly burned out, it glittered like a Christmas tree. It was tall and roughly man-shaped, with a torso made from an old vacuum cleaner. Its original function had, in fact, been to clean, but its current occupation was pirate. The image of the flying saucer was reported promptly to a brain that had been cobbled together using a computer program designed to run a large model train set. The robot wasn't scared of the aliens, or even all that curious about them. The most the robot was able to muster was a sort of temporary giddy excitement that model train sets specialize in. The robot watched the flying saucer coming toward it with a detached certainty that humankind was doomed. Which was unfortunate, not because it liked the humans, but because it would get bored if they weren't around. It glanced down and noticed that the missing hat had turned up next to its foot. It reached down to pick it up just as the departing flying saucer roared overhead, the wind of its passing sending the hat skipping and skittering away to dance across the fields of debris. The robot was so busy chasing the runaway hat that it didn't see that the saucer had landed briefly and left behind a passenger. By the time the pirate hat was stuck in place back atop the wastebasket, the saucer had taken off again and rocketed back into space in a flash of green light. The government men tracking the robot didn't see the saucer either. By all rights, they should have, since they weren't looking for it, but no one told them about Deeds or his paradox. They found the spectacle of the robot chasing its runaway hat too funny to concentrate on much else. The sight of the metal man stumbling, hopping, and hobbling among the piles of junk on a peg leg had sent them to hysterics. The green flash caught their attention, but too late to spot the alien spacecraft and distracted them just long enough for the robot to catch its hat and slip away into the night. Frustrated and annoyed, they spent an hour coming up with elaborate lies to tell their bosses about why they lost the robot they'd been sent to capture. They eventually decided to claim the robot had vanished into thin air, evidence of a super science they couldn't possibly have expected or anticipated and therefore couldn't possibly be blamed for. As is often the case, the lie was not nearly as incredible as the truth, which is just as well because though everyone knows that truth is stranger than fiction, no one is actually willing to admit when it happens. The alien waved at the departing saucer to display thanks and reassure the rear-facing laser turret that it wasn't going to shoot them down. One of the few truly universal gestures is showing friendliness and thanks by displaying one's hands, claws, pincers, or tentacles, and that they're empty, because shooting someone with small, easily concealable weapons is also a universal gesture. This has led the inhabitants of even the most marginally civilized worlds to develop the habit of waving hello and goodbye. It kept waving until the saucer disappeared behind the planet's only moon and then turned to its task. Readings were checked on strange instruments that would have been of profound interest to the government men squabbling in the nearby van. Once the alien was certain it could breathe the moist atmosphere, the clear dome of its helmet retracted. Alien lungs inhaled and exhaled, savoring the air. To the annoyance of biologists and science fiction fans everywhere, the alien was in no way inconvenienced by the millions of viruses and bacteria in the air. Life forms, of all sizes, instinctively avoid hostile environments, and even the common cold was smart enough to steer clear of alien nostrils. The planet's natives viewed their galaxy edge-on as a thick band of stars stretching across the darkness. It was pretty in its way, and it told the alien all it needed to know about where it was and when. Humans are noisy creatures, and even so late at night, the air was alive with information, and voices broadcasting inane chatter from a mouth in one place to an ear in another and back. As it listened, the alien body began to shift and elongate into what its research told it would be a locally pleasant form. It took the visitor a moment to get used to going about on only 2 feet and manipulating instruments with long extremities that extended from the end of each of its 2 upper appendages. The information stream informed them these were called fingers, and wiggled the smaller but shorter lower extremities in the cold grass which the locals apparently called piggies. Its soft bare feet carried it as far as the edge of the paved causeway leading toward the distant lights of the city. Transports of various sizes whizzed past back and forth along the paved thoroughfare, painting the new body with their lights. Alien lips pursed to whistle a happy alien tune as it hooked an alien thumb toward the distant city in the other truly universal gesture. Humans roared past the odd little pink visitor, with its thumb stuck out without a backward glance. The oral history of their people had taught them to believe that no matter how small and innocent looking, the figure standing alongside the road was a vicious serial killer with a hook for a hand. They averted their eyes and accelerated away without a backward glance. If someone had stopped to pick up the strange little hitchhiker, it's possible that a good deal of what follows might have turned out differently, or not happened at all. But no one did, and the alien visitor reached the city at morning's light, footsore and in a foul mood. Dr. Deeds rolled over in his sleep, ignorant of the fact that the theory for which he was most often mocked was being proven correct. We'll get back to him later. End of the chapter.